The lecture notes for Chapter 10, which is on the muscular system. Chapter 9 was on muscle tissue. Chapter 10 is on the muscular system. Somehow I got mixed up in some of the assignments because they're both related to muscle. So the most important thing for you to do by the 25th, which is Thursday, is to make sure you do the Chapter 10 homework and the Chapter 10 reading assignment. You should have done your PAL quizzes, your Practice Anatomy Lab quizzes, but if you didn't, you can still turn them in on the 25th. So make sure that you, basically by Thursday, make sure you've done all of the Chapter 9 homework and reading quizzes, Exercise 13 best of homework, which really should have gone down here with Chapter 10, and all of the muscle PAL cadaver and models quizzes, and then Chapter 10 homework and reading. Just everything that you see listed here on this calendar for the 18th and the 25th, make sure you have all of it done by the 25th. Next week, you don't have any assignment except for the practical exam 2, which is due on the Wednesday because we are on holiday April the 1st and 2nd. So March the 31st is your practical exam 2 is when that is due. So now what I would like to do is go to our Moodle course. Chapter 10. And work on the lectures. And one more thing, gosh, I should have stayed on it, but let's go back to Mastering A&P just real quick, because one more thing I want to show you. This chapter is a memorization chapter. I mean, it's not stuff you have to understand as much as it's more anatomy than it is physiology. There is some physiology because you have to understand how the muscles work and what kinds of movements they produce, what type of lever system that they are. But if you remember in Mastering A&P, you have a section called Study Area. When you click on Study Area, you can study by chapter. But it's going to be really important for you to do your art labeling activities for Chapter 10. Your art labeling activities for Chapter 10, and of course, study all the figures on muscles in the PAL cadaver and the PAL model labs. And those will help you with the practical exam, but they will also help you with your lecture exam, your next lecture exam. Okay, so let's go ahead and start. There are 216 slides. I will obviously not go through all of them, but I will definitely go through some of the part that you have to be able to understand, especially how muscles and bones and joints interact as lever systems, and the naming and classification of different muscles, as well as the the type of lever system that they are and what that means, and the classification of different names and classifications of different muscles. Okay, so muscle tissue consists of skeletal, cardiac, and smooth, but we are going to focus on skeletal muscle in this chapter. All right, this is important. Muscles can only pull. Muscles do not push, they only pull. And you always have, if what one muscle group does, the movement that one muscle group does, another one does the opposite or undoes it. So you always have a prime mover or agonist. I'll give you an example in a minute. And that's going to be the main muscle that carries out the movement. Then you're going to have the antagonist, which opposes that movement. So, and they're typically located on opposite sides of the joint. So, for example, the biceps brachii, when you're standing in an anatomical position, this muscle is located on the anterior side of your upper arm. And it is the agonist for flexing the arm. So if we're talking about the movement of flexion at the elbow, the biceps would be the agonist. The triceps would be the antagonist because the triceps would cause extension. Okay? So there's the agonist, there's the antagonist. There also are muscles called synergists, which help the agonist or prime movers. And a good example of that is the gastrocnemius, or your calf muscle, is the prime mover of plantar flexion, or standing on your tiptoes. And one of the synergists, or the main synergist to the gastrocnemius, is the soleus. And fixators help to maintain posture. They stabilize and immobilize bone. They are a type of synergist that immobilize bone or muscles origin rather than enhancing the movement of prime movers. So a fixator is not, it's not a synergist that helps prime movers move, but it helps give stability. Fixators, for example, are the muscles that help you to sit up and stand up. The erector spinae muscles are examples of fixator muscles. And they're going to help you to sit and stand erect. You do need to watch the animations that are in your study area, the A and P flicks, which will show you basically every muscle and the action that it does. Okay, what you're looking at here is the pectoralis major and the shoulder joint. When the pectoralis major is crossing the anterior side of the shoulder joint, just like the biceps brachii cross the anterior side of the elbow joint. So if they cross the anterior side, most of the time they produce flexion. The exception would be the knee and the ankle. Then it's opposite. But flexion of the arm is when you take your arm is at your side, and you move it, you just move the whole entire arm straight up. That's flexion at the shoulder joint. And the agonist, or the primary muscle for that, is the pectoralis major. Now on the posterior side, the antagonist for the pectoralis major is the latissimus dorsi, because it is going to produce extension of the arm. So when you move your arm, when you look at your anatomical figure, notice you're going backwards here. You're moving it to the dorsal side or the posterior side. That is going to be extension of the arm. And then if you go even further back, it'll be hyperextension of the arm. But the point is, extension is when you move it backwards to the dorsal side, and that is carried out by the latissimus dorsi. So what that means is the pectoralis major and the latissimus dorsi are agonist and antagonist to each other. The agonist is the pectoralis major, and the antagonist is the latissimus dorsi. All right, if a muscle crosses on the lateral side of a joint, it produces abduction. Abduction is moving away from the body. So the deltoid, the middle fibers of the deltoid, or you can just learn the deltoid is going to produce the movement of abduction. So that would be the agonist or prime mover for abduction of the arm. And then bringing the arm back toward your body is going to be the teres major. The teres major, which is this muscle right here. The teres major is going to be the antagonist, and it's going to be located on the medial side of that joint, of the shoulder joint. So lateral side is abduction, medial side is adduction. All right, so a muscle can act as a prime mover in one movement, an antagonist in a different movement, and a synergist for a third movement. Example, the movement of flexion at the shoulder joint. The agonist for that is the deltoid, the middle fibers of the deltoid. And the antagonist for that is the teres major. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I meant to say abduction. Abduction at the shoulder joint is the agonist is the deltoid, the antagonist is the teres major. But you can turn it around, and adduction at the shoulder joint, where you bring your arm back toward your body, the agonist is now going to be the teres major, and the antagonist is going to be the deltoid. So depending on the movement, a muscle can act as a prime mover, an antagonist, or a synergist for different movements. Okay? All right, now when we name skeletal muscles, we can use the location of the muscle, like the region. The temporalis muscle is located over the temporal bone, for example. Temporalis muscle in your head is located over the temporal bone. Shapes of muscles, deltoid means triangle, so the deltoid shoulder muscle is triangle shaped. And you also will see words that describe the size of the muscle. Maximus, largest, minimus, smallest, longest is long, and brevis is short, like brevis for brevity. And learning these terms and what they mean will help you, I went the wrong way, sorry, will help you to remember the names of the individual muscles, because you are going to have to know them. So another way that you can name skeletal muscles is the direction that the muscle fibers or muscle fascicles run in comparison to the longitudinal axis of the body. So if it's rectus, the muscle fibers run straight. If it is transversus, they run at right angles. And oblique fibers run at angles kind of like that. Number of origins. Bicep means 2 origins. Origin is where the muscle begins, and it's the part that stays still. Remember that. It's the part that doesn't move. So the biceps have 2, the triceps have 3, and the quadriceps have 4.